What if I told you that your biggest fertility mistake might be focusing too much in ovulation? If you've been trying to conceive and you're tracking with apps, ovulation strips, monitors, or every gadget under the sun, but is still wondering if you're missing your fertile window, this episode is for you. Today, we are talking about the difference between ovulation and the fertile window and why they're not the same thing, and how understanding that distinction can completely change the way that you approach conception. So grab a notebook, let's dive in. Do you long to get pregnant and trust your body again? Do you feel exhausted by the month after month cycle of hope and disappointment? Do you carry that creeping sense of failure? The fear that your body just isn't working the way that it should? If so, I'm so glad that you're here, my friend. Hi, I'm Mariana, a wife, mom, and a fertility care practitioner. After years of confusion and heartache, I learned how to understand my cycle with clarity and move towards pregnancy naturally by following a real system instead of guessing. This is Fertile Window Lab. If you're ready for real clarity about your cycle, a simple method that works, and less pressure from predictions, alarms, and fertility gymnastics, sit down the sticks, pop in your earbuds, and let's make sense of your fertility together. Okay, friend, before we dive in, I have something exciting to share. We just crossed 5,000 podcast downloads, and I'm so grateful for every single one of you who have listened, shared an episode, or been part of this community. So to celebrate, I'm doing a giveaway. One listener is going to win my favorite journal, my favorite water bottle, and a $25 Amazon gift card. That's right, all three. Now, here's how to enter. Leave a written review for the podcast and take a screenshot before you hit submit. Then send me the screenshot using the link in the show notes. That's it. And if I can ask a small favor, my goal is to reach 100 reviews. And your review does two really important things. First, it lets me know that this podcast is bringing value to your fertility journey. And second, it helps more women discover the show when they're searching for answers and support. So if you ever listen to an episode and thought, wow, I needed that, will you take just 2 minutes to leave a review? Then send me your screenshot and you'll be entered to win the journal, the water bottle, $25 Amazon gift card. Thank you for helping me celebrate this milestone. Now, let's jump into today's episode. I spent years believing that the fertility window and ovulation were basically the same thing. If I could identify the date I ovulated, then I would know everything I needed to know. When I was first introduced to fertility awareness, it was through what many people know as the rhythm method. The idea was simple. Count from your period, estimate when ovulation should happen, and at that time, we wanted to use that information to avoid pregnancy. So avoid anything before that day and assume ovulation had passed afterwards and move on. But there was a problem. The math wasn't mathing. The method was largely built around a 28-day cycle, and my cycles were often 35 days or longer. So I remember looking at the calendars, counting days, trying to figure out whether I was doing it correctly. And if I'm honest, I was feeling like I was gambling. I wasn't confident. I was not certain. I was even adding days, subtracting days, and I was hoping I was doing it right. Fast forward today, the technology has changed. I often see the same mindset. Instead of counting days on the calendar, women now use fertility apps. They use LED strips. They use the clear blue monitors. They give them smiley faces and peak readings. They use the Mira or Nido to track hormone patterns through the cycle. And again, different tools with the same goal. Let's find ovulation. Narrow down the exact day and don't miss it. And for a long time, I thought the same thing. If I could just identify the day of ovulation, I'll be good. But eventually, I realized something that completely changed how I understood fertility. Ovulation and the fertile window are not the same thing. And once I understood the distinction, so many of the questions women ask started to make sense. Questions like, when should I have sex? Should we try every day or every other day? Which day is my best day? Am I missing ovulation? What I discovered is that fertility is bigger than ovulation. And if you've been trying to conceive for months or even years, that distinction is more important than you realize. But Before we walk through maximizing your fertility window, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. Ovulation is a single event. It's the moment the egg is released from the ovary. But before that happens, a follicle develops and matures under the influence of hormones, particularly estrogen. Estrogen rises and it doesn't just help prepare the egg. It also stimulates the production of cervical mucus. And this is important because cervical mucus is one of the earliest signs that fertility is approaching. Now, here's where many women get surprised. The egg itself has a very short lifespan. Once it's released, it typically survives only about 12 to 24 hours. Think about that. If fertility depended solely on the lifespan of the egg, conception will be incredibly difficult. But nature has a solution. Cervical mucus creates an environment where healthy sperm can survive for several days while waiting for ovulation to occur. In other words, fertility begins before ovulation. And this is why the fertile window is larger than ovulation event itself. And if you've been trying to conceive for a while, this extension is incredibly important because every month that passes without having an answer can feel heavier than a month before. And you might start asking difficult questions like, did I miss ovulation? Did we try the wrong day? Is my age working against me? Should I be doing more? Is this ever going to happen for us? And before long, fertility becomes a math problem that you're trying to solve instead of a biological process you're trying to understand. And that's why understanding the fertile windows matters so much. Not because it warranties pregnancy, but because it gives you a clear picture what your body's actually doing in the day-by-day basis. So now we're going to walk into 3 different things that I want you to focus on. Stop looking for the perfect ovulation day. Again, one of the biggest misconceptions is the belief that we can just identify the day of ovulation, then we'll finally know when to conceive. And I understand why. That was me too. For years, you've been taught that fertility revolves around ovulation. Find ovulation and you have found your fertile time. But here's the problems. Cycles are not machines and we're not machines. They're living biological process that responds to stress, travel, illness, sleep changes, nutrition deficiency, hormone imbalances, postpartum transitions, and countless other factors. A woman may ovulate on day 14 in 1 month and on day 19 on the next. She may have a 28-day cycle during one season of life and a 38-day cycle during another. Even healthy women experience a variation. Yet, so many fertility tools are built around helping women predict a day. And when that predicted day comes and goes without a pregnancy, many women conclude something isn't working. And we start wondering about misovulation, time intercourse wrong, if our body's not working. But often the issue isn't that they miss, is that they were never given a reliable roadmap in the first place. So if you've been listening and you've been around the block with fertility apps, age strips, monitors, temperature tracking, and every gadget under the sun, I want you to hear this. The goal isn't finding the perfect ovulation day. The goal is understanding your fertile window, because fertility is not a moment, it's a process. And when we shift focus from chasing a day to recognizing a window, we begin working with our instead of constantly trying to predict it. Point number 2, learn to recognize your fertile window. This is where cervical mucus becomes so important. As estrogen rises and egg matures, the body begins to produce cervical mucus. I know for some women, they think mucus is an inconvenience or is a random discharge, but it's one of the body's most valuable fertility signs. The challenge is that many women have never been taught what they're actually looking for. And it's not simply the presence or absence of mucus that matters. The quality matters. The pattern matters. The progression matters. So many women see obvious mucus and others don't. In fact, some women rarely see visible mucus at all. Instead, they notice a sensation, feeling slippery when they wipe, or feeling that something is different. And for those women, identifying fertility can feel incredibly frustrating because they're trying to compare themselves to pictures on the internet that don't match their experience. And this is one of the reasons I became so passionate about teaching the Great model. Not because women need another app, not because women need another gadget, because they need a standardized way to identify what they're seeing and recognize the difference between chronic discharge and fertile mucus, the difference between a sensation and a true mucus pattern, and the difference between guessing and observing. Because when you don't understand what you're seeing, it's easy to feel like you're missing an opportunity month after month. That's exactly why Learning to accurately identify and interpret cervical mucus is such a powerful skill, not just because mucus helps you get pregnant, but because mucus helps reveal where fertility is happening and other biomarkers are crucial for your hormonal health. Point number 3, be intentional, not mechanical. Once couples begin identifying the fertile, the next question is always, okay, Ariana, but how often should we have sex? And honestly, I love the answer one of the NAPR physicians I work with gives. Frequently and enjoyable, not mechanical, not stressful, not like you're clocking into a shift of work, frequently and enjoyable. In my own practice, I have seen pregnancies that occur when a couple only use the first day of the fertile window. And I also seen pregnancies that occur when a couple only use the last day of the fertile window. Why? Because conception isn't about perfectly hitting one magical day. It's about understanding the window. A healthy fertile window often gives you several days before the hormone peak and several days afterward to navigate life and still being intentional. That means that you have room for work schedules, room for family life, for travel, room for being human. When conception becomes reduced to we have to hit this exact day, intimacy can quickly become a project, a task, a performance metric, and my friend, that kills passion quickly. The goal here is to be intentional. And now, before we finish, I know some women are listening who are thinking, but how do I really know if I ovulated? My honest answer is that the only way to know is with a very high level of precision is through a series of ultrasounds tracking the follicle development and eventually follicle rupture. That is something our physicians may order when they are investigating deeper questions. When it comes down to the egg, they're trying to assess if the follicle is growing appropriately, if ovulation is delayed or taking too long to rupture, if it's occurring too early and the egg is released prematurely, or if the follicle is developing but never rupturing, aka never releasing the egg. Those are questions an ultrasound can help answer. And I think this is very important to understand because sometimes women come to me feeling like they have tried everything. They have downloaded every app, bought every monitor, tracked every symptom, spent hundreds or even thousands of dollars trying to gather more information. Yet, they still don't feel like they understand their cycle. And if that's you, I want you to know that needing more clarity doesn't mean that you have failed. Sometimes it simply means you have never been taught how all pieces fit together. Sometimes more data doesn't automatically create more clarity. Before we wrap up today, I want to bring us back to the question we started with. How do I maximize my fertility window? Well, it's easy to believe that the answer is finding the perfect ovulation day, the perfect app, the perfect monitor, the best test strip, the perfect timing. What I hope you take away from today's episode is that fertility is bigger than a single day. Ovulation is an event. The fertile window is a process. And when we start understanding the difference, we can stop chasing ovulation and start recognizing the signs our body is already giving us. Today, we talked about 3 important truths. First, cycles are not machines. They can vary from month to month, and relying solely on calendar calculations can leave women feeling confused and discouraged. Second, cervical mucus is one of the body's most important fertility signs. Not just its presence, but its quality and pattern can help reveal when fertility is approaching. And third, conception is not about perfectly hitting one magical day. Once we identify the fertile window, couples have the opportunity to be intentional without turning intimacy into a mechanical task. And if you're listening today feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, or wondering why all the tracking hasn't brought the clarity you were hoping for, I want you to know you're not alone. Many women have information. Far fewer women have a roadmap. And understanding your fertility is not about collecting more data. It's about learning how to interpret what your body is already communicating. Next week, we're going even deeper because one of the biggest questions I hear is, does the sperm really live for 5 days? And what does fertile mucus actually looks like? We are going to unpack both of those questions and explore why cervical mucus may be one of the most misunderstood parts of female fertility. Thank you for joining me today. And if this episode helped bring clarity to your understanding of the fertile window, be sure to come back next week as we continue this conversation. We'll be unpacking one of the most common fertility questions: does the sperm really live for 5 days? And what role does cervical mucus actually play? Until then, remember that understanding your fertility isn't about becoming perfect at tracking. It's about learning to understand the language your body is speaking. keep seeking answers, keep growing in confidence, and keep pursuing a fruitful and wholesome life. I'll see you next week on the Fertile Window Lab with Ariana.
I'm my mama's little fertility helper. If this episode has helped you, or if you feel a little more hopeful, leave a review. She'll love it.
Hi, DTC Warrior. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. It truly helps to get this show into ears of more women who need it. And be sure to sign up for my weekly encouragement, tips, and insights straight to your inbox. I promise to keep it practical, hopeful, and faith-friendly. All right, I'm off to tacos, chocolate, and turn my cycle. I'll meet you back here next week. Bye.